I'm not trying to scare you, but there are way too many pilots up there who don't actually understand how an airplane flies. A lot of them are pushing buttons and great with computers and they can nail the technical side of it.
What's our vector, Victor?
But it takes a lot more than that to be a great pilot. So today, let's talk about how a wing is actually flown, starting with the phrase angle of attack. It is perhaps all there is to know how an airplane flies. I'm Brady Skye. I film, I travel, I fly. And I'm ready to share the experience with you.
Cheers, man.
Angle of attack. It explains the climb, glide, straight and level flight, stalls, spins. It's also the story of the landing. No maneuver can fully be understood until you understand this one thing. You may still struggle with flying, well, especially a tailwheel, but you will be able to figure things out much easier and analyze your mistakes with this knowledge. So let's get started. There's only one easy way to understand something you don't know, and that's comparing it to the things that you do know. So the rudder of an airplane can be compared to a ship's rudder in the ocean, or the yoke wheel can make you turn left or right like a car. But the wing is the one thing completely new and has no comparison to anything like it on the ground. You are now a winged animal.
Mine?
Let's start with what angle of attack isn't. It is not the angle of which the nose of your airplane meets the horizon. Let me get this plane. It's not the attitude of your airplane. That's called attitude, and we can talk about that later, especially if yours needs an adjustment. An airplane, could be nose high, nose low, and let's say it's nose low, it could still have a high angle of attack, and vice versa. If it's nose high, it could have a low angle of attack, a lower angle of attack. So the angle of attack is actually the angle at which the wing meets the air. Let's go back to how a wing manages to fly and how it's developed, how it gets flight. In ground school during your training, you're probably going to learn about Bernoulli's theorem, how the air and shooting around the long way over the top of the wing has to speed up, and that causes it to drop some of its pressure, and it then exerts a suction on top of the surface of the wing. Forget all that. It may be true, but it's not going to help you be a good pilot. And that explanation just causes even more confusion. It's not going to make you fly better. The main fact of all heavier than air flight is the wing keeps the airplane up by pushing the air down. This is a Corsair, so the wings it's got a bent wing configuration, so it's kind of confusing. But yeah, wing shoves the air down with its bottom surface, and it pulls the air down with its top surface, and all that really matters is the wing forces the air to go down. And so because of that, the wing receives an upward counterforce. It's the same principle as Newton's law of action and reaction. The space shuttle engines, for example, push out hot gases, right? And that's your action force. And the hot gases put a force on the shuttle engines, and that's your reaction force, so the shuttle lifts. Believe it or not, air actually has weight, and at sea level weighs about 2 pounds per cubic yard. So you're getting an upward reaction of that heavy weight. But all these fancy physics, Bernoulli's theorem, Newton's law, it's only going to get you so far. It's like studying the molecules of a soccer ball being kicked right as it's kicked instead of analyzing and observing its behavior in general. But think of a wing as an inclined plane, air deflector. An airplane. It is the plane part of the airplane we have to try to understand. As an example of demonstrating angle of attack, let's say an airplane is flying straight and level around 2100 RPMs, right? Nice cruising RPM. Let's pull back the power now, okay? And then do whatever is necessary to maintain our altitude without dropping or climbing. Level flying with much reduced power is actually quite easy to do. You can proceed at very low speeds, nose high. Your airplane is pointed more upward like it wants to climb, but you're actually remaining the same altitude, not climbing or descending, okay? You're just remaining the same altitude. And it's almost in a stall, and it can fly in this fashion all day long, except for some types of engines which may gradually overheat. But this is actually a dramatized and exaggerated demonstration of how it always flies. Believe it or not, airplanes actually always fly a nose high, pointing up a little higher than it actually goes. At least an airplane's wing does. If it didn't, it would have no angle of attack and therefore no lift at all. So at cruising, the angle of attack may be very small. In slow flight, the propeller just fell off. That's all right. In slow flight, the small angle of attack does not provide enough lift to hold the airplane up like this. So because of this, at a slower speed, the wing catches fewer pounds of air per minute, and it compensates. So, in order to keep the lift strong enough to hold the airplane up, the air must be deflected more sharply downward. So to accomplish this, the wing's angle of attack must be increased. So the pilot, you do this by pulling the stick further back, and you're sitting like this now, but there's still really no difference between cruising flight and slow. The difference is it is more noticeable in slow flight. Now, you will also notice in slow flight, the controls feel different than cruising, the ailerons feel soft, and unless the elevator is trimmed way back, you have to hold the stick back to keep the airplane, at that high angle of attack. So things change for every speed. In fact, the controls can feel odd in a fast dive as well. Getting some experience in slow flight before you even start your landings can be a huge help, because you rarely get slow flight except for moments at a time during your training. And if you think that the airplane cannot maintain this flight condition steadily, you are missing the main point of the entire whole art of flying. Now, I'm mostly referring to tailwheel airplanes, but this is still very relevant to tricycle gear. I am a tailwheel pilot and enthusiast here in St. Augustine, Florida, and I fly a Taylor craft right now, and I've flown a Legend Cub as well. This can pay out directly in actual skill and better landings, though. Let's use a 3-point landing and a tailwheel as an example, right? You're coming in slower and slower and slower, like this, and you're at more of a higher and higher angle of attack. If you learn how the airplane flies at various speeds, you'll learn how to maintain control over the airplane and the flight path, because you know how it responds at these various speeds upon landing. And by the way, 3-point landings are not the only landings you want to know how to do, but that's a whole nother video. The last thing you want to happen, though, is to be too slow, too high above the ground, and stall. So you really got to feel at home with the airplane in slow flight, and power on and power off stall practice is not enough for you to truly gain this comfort. Now, let's take the opposite scenario. Let's say we're going to go throttle all the way up, and as the prop spins faster, the airplane's going to want to climb. It's going to want to go up. So now to keep the airplane from climbing, we are now going to hold the stick down, right, to maintain level flight. And it seems like there's no angle of attack right now, or that the angle of attack's negative, but that is incorrect. What we could call no lift line of a wing is still at a positive angle of attack, even in full power. Very fast flight. The wing is still an inclined plane meeting the air at an angle of attack, and it is pushing the air down. Wings are curved, though. They have a curved body, containing an inclined plane, and that inclined plane can be kind of hard to see. So in a very fast flight, when the inclined plane is working at a very small angle of attack, the wing looks because of its streamlined housing, as if there were no angle of attack. It looks negative, but it only looks that way. For every speed, there is one angle of attack that will produce just enough lift to hold your ship up. The more speed you have, the less angle of attack you need. The less speed you have, the more angle of attack you need. So instead of saying the ship was flying fast, an engineer might say it was a low angle of attack. But weight also has a role in this as well. The more weight an airplane has, the greater angle of attack it will need to sustain itself in the air. So a really heavy, overloaded plane flying, overseas might have to mush along a little nose high for a while for the first few hours of flight until it burns off fuel, and then the ship will get lighter and you'll see the nose start to level with the horizon. So now picture yourself flying along. You're looking out the window of the plane. You see the wing next to you, and you see the horizon behind it. You can kind of see the wing is level with the horizon, and so you're taking note of the way that the wing's aligning itself with that, and are you nose high or nose low? And so, in practical flying, that is exactly what does not happen. Our flight path is not necessarily level, even though the nose may be pointing level. The airplane may be sinking or ballooning. So the air flows at the airplane, not necessarily horizontally from straight ahead. It may flow at the airplane upward from ahead and below. So the angle of attack cannot be seen simply by looking out the window at the wing. It can't be seen at all. Remember, angle of attack is the angle at which the wing meets the air, and we can't see the air. So this is perhaps largely why flying is so much of an art, if one were to treat it that way. Now, you might be completely lost at this point and wanting to fix your attention on something else that you can hear or see that makes more sense, but you're on the right track to becoming a really great pilot as long as you keep trying to understand angle of attack. And one of the key factors to better understanding this is how the airplane is maneuvering and its positioning in relationship to the wind's direction and speed. I'm going to throw one more thing at you, and at least for now, and the angle of attack can also be defined as the angle which the wing meets the relative wind. So what is the relative wind? The relative wind is a breeze made by our own motion relative to the air. So if you're riding a bike and you're getting cooled off by the wind, you know that wind is actually being made from you moving. That's your relative wind. So the air could actually be still outside, but you're producing that wind with your own motion. And it's no different with an airplane. If an airplane flies level, the relative wind blows back at it level. If an airplane slides sideways and is in a slide slip to the left, the airplane of flight blows back at the airplane's left side. And a glide, the airplane's along a downward slope, and the wind of flight, you could call it, comes blowing up that slope. So when people first start flying, most of them go by mechanical clues, like the nose pointing above the horizon or below the horizon, what the throttle's set to, what the instruments say, and that's perfectly fine to begin with. But those are things of the ground. Those are not things of the air, and they're not really the most important ones for flight. So as you keep flying, you will get more familiar with your airspeed and hopefully have such a good grasp on your airspeed, you won't even really need to look at it very often. I know in the Taylor craft, I don't look at it at all anymore, but it's not the most important thing. Airspeed's not the most important thing. It can be to prevent you from stalling, but we'll save, another video for talking about stalls. But the direction of the relative wind matters more, and it's the angle from which the air is rushing against the wing. So in all of your maneuvers, whether gliding, turning, stalling, taking off, landing, start asking yourself, where at this moment is the air coming from and what angle are my wings meeting it? Many excellent pilots don't even have a grasp on angle of attack or relative wind, but that will not be you. You will approach flying as an art, and thus will have a better understanding of how an airplane actually flies. And because of that, you will be a much safer pilot and a much better pilot. This concludes my explanation on angle of attack. This is guided by the book Stick and Rudder, and check it out below. There's much more to flying and lots more to talk about, but hopefully this gets you thinking more about the art of flying and not just the technicalities, because they are two very different things. I'm very biased. I love tailwheel flying. I think there's a little more of an art to tailwheel flying.
It's an entirely different kind of flying.
But this applies to any pilot and any airplane. So get out there, have an adventure, have fun, and happy flying. Thanks for watching.